This is my presentation on how to manipulate and adapt my classroom to fit the needs of students that may have exceptionalities or differences. So first of all, we have learning disabilities. The first one would be dyslexia. They might be a little awkward around other people, and they might have difficulty reading social cues. Some cognitive characteristics would be that they have difficulty spelling, reading, and writing, and they have difficulty pronouncing words. That's just because they get certain letters mixed up. Some ways to help them would be modifying the text, giving them a little extra time on reading, allowing some answers to be given by talking instead of writing or typing, or maybe allowing them to type if that's what they prefer. Having multisensory learning, so they can make connections between the words and the letters and physical things in this world, and maybe providing spell checkers. The next one's ADHD. They are impulsive. They have the inability to pay attention for long periods of time. They might be very hyperactive, and they have difficulty making close relationships because the students can just tell that they're a little different from them. They have difficulty paying attention in class. They have difficulty focusing. And because of those two things, they have a slightly lower IQ just because they don't pay attention as well in school. Some ways to help would be to do row seating instead of circle tables, so they have a direct line of sight of you and the lesson instead of looking at other students. You need to provide a quiet area for them, using visual cues, planning, doing shorter lessons, shorter tests, and having frequent breaks, breaking things down into smaller bits and pieces, and providing them a planner and other things to help them remember specific things. Dyscalculia is just the same thing as dyslexia, except it involves math. They just have difficulty with mathematic equations and counting, mainly backwards. Some ways to help would be playing games, providing visual stimuli, and using real-life examples and multisensory learning just the same way, so they can make, as dyslexia, so they can make those physical connections with the numbers and different mathematic equations and stuff like that. And then along with this and a lot of other disabilities that I will talk about, you just need to give them extra test time and extra homework time on their assignments. Dysgraphia is exactly the same again, except it involves physically writing. They might have poor and slow handwriting as well, and they might have difficulty expressing their thoughts on paper. Some ways to help would be to provide pencil grips, provide type notes instead of having them write, allow extra time, like I said, and then having a proofreader or audio recorder, and adapt the tests to maybe fill in the blank or circle the correct answer rather than writing full sentences as their response. And give them a choice of handwriting, whether or not they want to write in print or cursive, because they might feel more comfortable or feel like they're better at doing one or the other. Language disorders, they might have difficulty adapting to social situations, or they might not be sure how to ask for help. They tend to use words incorrectly. They have poor grammar, and they have a slightly reduced vocabulary and other things like that. And once again, just provide visual or written cues. You need to be a good speech model yourself. Use correct grammar, concise language, stuff like that. Reduce classroom noise, and establish communication goals. The next one is emotional behavioral disorders. First of all, you have autism. They have problems with eye contact and social interaction with people. They need sameness. They need a strict schedule and routine, and they also are more comfortable around the same people every day. And they might have difficulty recognizing emotions. Now, they might have the inability to retrieve words they've learned in the past. It might be a little difficult for them to understand literature, math, and other complex things like that. They have poor problem solving, and they might have problems with understanding situations and maybe learning new things like tying their shoes or riding a bike. Some ways to help would be to avoid sensory overloads. You need to use visual stimuli, and you need to provide a very strict schedule and be very predictable and give them a heads up if something about that schedule is going to change. You need to integrate their interests into the classroom. If they like music, then integrate music into the classroom to help it'll light them up and make it more enjoyable for them. Maybe, and once again, modified tests and longer testing times. Bipolar disorder, which is usually known as the quick transitions between emotions and just kind of the dangerous behavior. And because of all this, they usually suffer from guilt, grief, or worry. They also might have attention memory issues. And some ways to help would be minimize noises in the classroom to help alleviate the overwhelming feelings they might have, establish a safe place for them to go, and set up schedules, and provide short step-by-step instructions and to encourage them to participate in activities not only in the classroom but extracurricular activities as well. Anxiety, they might be avoidant and they might withdraw from others. They might have a fear of being judged, or they might just have a fear of things in life. And they tend to have a low self-esteem. They might have attention issues, memory issues, and they might suffer from anxiety attacks. So some ways to help them would be to have a meditation time and to take frequent breaks, not only just for them, but for your entire class. Provide a safe and quiet place, fill out planners and journals, and don't ask them to read aloud in class if they might not feel comfortable doing so. If they are comfortable, then go ahead, but they might not feel comfortable reading aloud in class because of their fear of being judged, their fear of stuttering and stuff like that. And most importantly, just be there emotionally to support them. Depression's the same way. They might withdraw from others and activities. Their self-care and their school performance decreases. They might be irritable, and they just have other cognitive issues like insomnia. You need to provide support for them. Avoid negative techniques. Just kind of think of a more positive way to get them to try to do their work. Break things down, maybe pair them up with a friend or a buddy, and provide fun activities to involve them in class. Intellectual disabilities. The first one is Down syndrome. They tend to be very happy individuals, but sometimes they end up suffering from anxiety or depression. They sometimes will have a loss of interest or motivation, and they withdraw socially. Sometimes they have a short attention span, poor judgment, impulsive behavior. They're slow at learning, and they might have delayed language or speech development. Some ways to help would be to provide a schedule or a planner, to shorten assignments and tests, allow longer time on tests, provide pictures, visual cues, and allow them to have a choice on what they want to do in the class, and maybe to have a teaching assistant in the classroom. The next one is Fragile X syndrome. They have poor eye contact, social avoidance, anxiety, short attention span. They might be hyperactive, a lower IQ, and a little bit slower at learning than other students. Some ways to help them would be a modified computer or maybe a tablet or a keyboard and other types of assistive technologies to help them communicate. You need a calm and quiet classroom, give them extra time, provide a plan or a schedule, and avoid close physical contact to try to prevent any outbursts or attacks. The next one would be Prader-Willi syndrome. They tend to react the same way to specific things over and over again, even if there is a different way that they should react. They have frequent outbursts, difficulty identifying emotions, and they are easily tempted by food. They often suffer from obesity just because they eat a lot. They have a short attention span. They might have difficulty switching between different tasks or ideas. They have difficulty multitasking, and they have difficulty with mathematics and other complex subjects like math. So some ways to help would be to adapt your physical education to help them manage their eating and food, not just for them, but also in your classroom. If there's other students with food out, it might tempt them. Show them physically instead of just telling them what you need them to do or what they are supposed to do. Make the assignments more fun and have a more positive response to their meltdowns and breakdowns and provide longer testing time. Then fetal alcohol syndrome. They have trouble getting along with others, trouble adapting to change, and they might be very impulsive. They have a short attention span, a poor attention of time, or a poor concept of time. They have difficulty staying on task, and they might have a poor memory. Some ways to help them is to be very clear and brief with your instructions. Give them extra testing time, reduce distractions in the classroom, provide sensory materials for them, and visual cues, stuff like that. Have a really structured schedule and environment, and keep the lessons short and sweet. Some other types of disabilities would be visual and hearing impairments, and then gifted students. Visual impairments, they have slower social development, less interaction with others, they're less responsive, eye contact is all a problem, and it's all just because of the fact that they might not be able to see very well. They might also have difficulty connecting experiences with things, because they can't physically see or tell what a car might look like. They have to learn how the world works and what the world might look like in a completely different way than what another person who can see would. Some ways to help them would be to use names while talking, and to also teach the students to use names while they're talking to each other or talking to the student with the visual impairment. Like saying, "Hey, Billy, I am so-and-so, Susie. Do you want to play with me at recess," or something. Always use names. Use precise language and directions. Tell them exactly like where they need to go, right, left, etc. Be very precise with all of that. Maybe sit them a little bit closer to you, so they might be able to see a little bit better if they do have just impaired vision and they're not completely blind. Allow them to feel the objects if that's possible, so they can kind of get an idea of what you're talking about, and provide assistive technology to help them see, like the microscope, glass, or the just scopes and other things to help them see things that you're talking about in the classroom. Hearing impairments, they might have difficulty with oral expression, they might be socially avoidant, they can become aggravated because they can't get their point across, and all that's just because they're unable to hear. They might have trouble forming sentences and understanding speech in general. Some ways to help them would be to face a student while talking, reduce background noise, provide visual stimuli, and have assistive technology like captions and FM systems. Now, gifted, they are perfectionists, they are very sensitive to things, they're very quick at learning, and they have a large vocabulary and memory, and they enjoy challenges, so you need to challenge them. You need to provide relevant and important material, and most importantly, utilize their talents, because they are extremely talented when you provide a positive place for them to use their talents. Maybe provide a safe place for them to go and understand how they think and feel, and let them know that you're there for them. So UDL in the classroom, there are three main principles: representation, action and expression, and engagement. And with those, the main ones that I might not have specifically said to help some of the students some of the disabilities that I mentioned would be, you need to identify the student's strengths and weaknesses. There is not a single disability that does not have a strength. There is a positive in every single situation, and there's good in every single child, and you need them to know that you understand that. You need to share content in a variety of ways, written, oral, etc. Offer choices to your students. There's so many different types of assistive technologies out there. I just listed a few. Provide a buddy system. Friends are one of the main components of school. Utilize their strengths is another huge component. Like I said, you need to identify their strengths, but you also need to utilize them in your classroom. And then also make or use their available IEPs or 504 plans, because those will help you understand how exactly that specific student works and how they handle their specific disability. So this was my presentation on how to accommodate students and their disabilities or exceptionalities in my classroom. And this is how I would use UDL in the classroom to help me change my classroom for the better of not only them, but for all of my students as a whole.